Welcome to my Bob Thurman podcast. I'm so grateful some good friends enabled me to present them to you. If you enjoy them and find them useful, please think of becoming a member of Tibet House US to help preserve Tibetan culture. Tibet House is the Dalai Lama's cultural center in America. All best wishes. Have a great day.
This is episode 262, Happiness and the Dalai Lama.
The first thing we have to get over in the issue of happiness is not only should we be allowed to pursue happiness, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as Jefferson wrote, but we should be allowed to enjoy happiness. And in fact, happiness should be our birthright as sensitive human beings. And we should have kind of trust in reality, let's say. It's wonderful to be able to address you remotely. And I'm sorry, due to the corona apocalypse, that we're not all physically together. But anyway, you are concerned about my favorite topic, which is the topic of happiness. I'm very proud of the American Declaration of Independence. It's probably the first such document where people are at least allowed to pursue happiness. I'm not sure they're allowed to catch up with it. In fact, but at least allowed to pursue it. The reason I mention that is that one of the biggest problems about people and happiness, which our industry, the industry of spas and wellness and retreats and resorts and getaways, etc., is addressing, is the fact that happiness in most industrial countries, and before that, militarized, aristocratic and hierarchical countries, most of them, happiness was more or less illegal. If you report suddenly, or you have a burst of feeling inside your heart, and you feel completely delighted with life, if you report that to your roommate or your spouse or your parent or your child, just spontaneously, I'm just so happy, they will probably consider you have lost your mind. So let's just imagine for a moment that happiness is our birthright, and we can have skill in happiness as humans, and we can cultivate a higher degree of having happiness. And then isn't that what we're about? Organic spa, organic food. Organic food means take care of the soil. Don't put poison, cancerous chemicals in the soil and expect not to catch cancer from eating them, eating whatever it produces. Clean up the soil, make it work in its own natural way that we've evolved to work with and live with. Be thankful to the plants that they give us back oxygen and receive our carbon if we don't emit too much of it, just by exhaling. We don't exhale out of giant coal-fired power plants and so on. So, in other words, if we can find a new balance and a new connection to this beautiful environment that we have evolved within to be the most pleasure-enjoying species, to enjoy it. And if we don't wreck it, we can have planetary happiness, absolutely. In fact, the source of wealth, skill, invention, creativity is actually happiness. And the source of love, actually, the true love, is actually happiness. This is something we don't realize. We always think happiness, we shouldn't really aim for it because it would be selfish. We get that idea. But actually, and in a way it is, but it's also altruistic. In other words, because when you're really happy, you naturally want those around you to be happy. Because even for further self-interest, in the sense that if they're really miserable, they will definitely manage to bring you down, as we say, since the 60s. If they have bad vibes because they're so unhappy, they will definitely dim your light, and like rain on your parade or whatever all our expressions are, definitely. And even, of course, one of the secrets that Dalai Lama is always good at our patron here at Menla, he has a wonderful thing he says. He says, if you want to be successfully selfish, in other words, enact your self-interest and be happy yourself, then be a wise selfish. He speaks a little bit ungrammatically there, but it's quite wonderful. Be a wise selfish and be compassionate. Do things for others. Be generous, you know. And what he means by that is that actually to fulfill your self-interest, the keyest thing is to help others fulfill their self-interest and to be compassionate to them, meaning feel that their suffering is just as important to get rid of as your suffering. And there's more of them, so that gives you more suffering to get rid of, and you help them to do it. And like if you are the true calling and vocation and profession of a healer, a doctor, a medical person, a nurse, you know, a caregiver, then you help a lot of people to overcome their pain, and this gives you great happiness, actually, and fulfills your thing. So it's this sort of wonderful, ironic paradox that when you help others, you're the first one who gets happy. When you have the motive to help others, just having that motive makes you sort of open your heart more. And the minute you open your heart, the more you connect to the reality of the world around you. The more you connect to the reality of the world around you, you see what are the silver linings in that world. And you find sources of pleasure in that world. And that is the secret to happiness, actually. Counting your blessings, of course, is part of it. But once you actually feel better, then you naturally, your better feeling overflows to others. And for example, love, we say, what is true love? True love is defined in all intelligent cultures as the wish for the happiness of the thing that you love, the beloved. It is not associated with greed and wanting something for yourself. We use the word love about that. I like that. I want it for myself. But we know from experience that by always wanting more things, we're always dissatisfied. So if we wrongly think that love is getting more things, the things that we like, we then realize that love is self-depleting because the more you get, the more dissatisfied you are. Because you always want more. Because it's the mode of, I get it for me, that then never ends, you see. Whereas when you have true love, which is you wish others to be happy, whatever they want, you want them to have it. And there's so many of them. And that wish then becomes like a river, a flow of well-being within yourself. And so anyway, we're in the business of making people happy, of helping them to be happy. Unfortunately, you can't make someone else happy. You can only provide them with the resources within which they make themselves happy. Now, one of our specialties here also at Menla, Spa Resort and Retreat Center, is that we attend to the mental level of them being happy because we're cued by the culture of the Tibetans of how to do that. And that includes meditation and learning. And meditation going along with a kind of learning about their own nature and cultivating their skills at being more happy, being more mindful, finding the silver lining of their own embodiment. Yoga is one of those things that is very much grows from this kind of vision rising out of India. But there's the yoga of mind as well as body. And that we're very good at, and we're specialists. We were teaching something online lately because of COVID. We've been teaching very much online, all of our different things. And also we realized that you can't, the spa industry should also reach out beyond its own confines into sharing things with the larger society. Because the more people have happiness in the larger society, the more they will want to go to spas. The more they will take advantage of spas will be seen as a kind of moral and psychological and therapeutic type of places where people can heal themselves from the disease of stress, of like get more money, get more status, get more fame, succeed, compete, etc. Dominate. There are mental ways of things that you learn that help you overcome that. And one of the great things, even for example, we take a great interest in teaching people to die well. and to understand what is death and not to fear death, and to realize that death is a way of opening into better lives and so forth, which fits with the current hospice movement that people, it doesn't necessarily inflict on everyone a view that they definitely are having such and such a future life like religions do, but it opens them to the possibility that they do and tries to help them cultivate things like lucid dreaming, dream yoga, sleep yoga, where they learn to sleep creatively and spiritually and perhaps become conscious in dreams and learn things spiritually in dreams, escape stress, reshape their environment and their life patterns to avoid stress and so forth. All of these kind of things, which are all wonderful arts and skills and sciences coming from the ancient Indian and Tibetan cultures that we try to be a doorway to share. I think happiness is the natural state of life. I think that in the sense that, I'm not quite sure in a way because I'm not enlightened myself, but someone who I think was enlightened, namely Shakyamuni the Buddha, in our history, there are many Buddhas, but that particular one, that was his discovery, that the nature of life itself is bliss, energy, because somehow, we think, I guess we, in our modern culture, we look out at night in the night sky, but we see little points of light, and we think of them as giant inferno flaming suns, like stars, but blazing suns, bigger than our sun, and really hot, and therefore actually rather painful when we imagine them. You couldn't possibly be near them, they would burn you to an ash. And then between that all darkness, and then we have a model of the atom in our mind, that there's a little nucleus and some electron or something and some weird particles that the quantum people talk about, mostly a dark space. So we think of sort of the final state of reality as a kind of dark nothingness, I think, that we're taught to do that as being realistic, as being our science thing. On the other hand, light shoots across those dark spaces and cosmic rays that they detect in salt mines and things. So it's actually full of energies, actually, that so-called dark space. It's not really. And the Buddha's view is that there is a plane of energy that is beyond, it's not dark energy and it's not light energy, it's transparent energy. So it doesn't look like it's there, but it is a kind of infinite energy. So he proposed as a physical scientific model that the deepest plane of reality, you could say, was we call the clear light energy. We call it sometimes clear light of the void or clear light of emptiness. And that energy is infinite. And the reason that it seems to be just stillness is that being infinite, from its point of view, it's not a person, so it actually doesn't really have a point of view, but we say, from its point of view, there's nothing more needs to be done. You know what I mean? Because it's infinite. So, but yet, if there's any entity that is made of it, actually, because it is sort of the substance of everything, the invisible or the clear, the transparent substance of everything, anything that's made of it itself feels like it needs energy, it needs something, it can infinitely draw from it, and it never exhausts it. So in that sense, the deep nature, the nirvanic reality, as he would call it, is a reality of complete abundance, not nothingness. But in a way, it's sort of almost, it's like a nothingness because it doesn't do anything by itself. And but on the other hand, if you lie in it, you feel you are that infinity, so you don't need anything. If you be aware enough to actually be able to lie in it, so that's what the Buddha's discovered, and the tradition of the inner science of the Buddhist cultures have continued to rediscover that. They have repeated that discovery again and again for thousands of years, and written all different ways of approaching it. On the other hand, they've always said, saying that it's so doesn't necessarily help a person to realize that it's so. But the pathway to realizing it has to do with investigating what you do think is there and what you can see and examining it. That's why the Buddhists love science. And they love quantum physicists particularly, who analyze and take apart even atoms, much less take apart like the floor or something, what the wood is made out of, the causation process of things, and the substance structure of things. And of course, our quantum people have discovered that when you take everything apart, you can't pinpoint any particular thing, but you're not lost. You're still you're still somewhere. You have discovered that any particular thing you try to seize as that's an indivisible particle, it dissolves under your analysis, but you never find a nothing, in other words, either. So they're sort of in an area of openness, let's call it. They haven't necessarily discovered nirvana themselves, because they're trapped by the dogma of materialism, but they're close to it. I think Einstein was pretty cheerful fellow. He never came up with a final theory, which Buddha predicted he wouldn't. If he had known about Einstein, he would have. His prediction is that there is no final theory, because the discovery of nirvana is the discovery that only by attending to your own experience and fully experiencing your experience, so to speak, you come to that reality, because you're made of it. But no description of it will be adequate of it. So therefore, there's no sort of dogmatic final theory about it. And he critiqued the idea of personifying the creation of the universe, that it was done by somebody with an intention. Because if you do that, then when there are difficulties, if people experience difficulties, then they will blame that on that person inevitably. And but there is no such person. But the reality itself, in a way, we all co-create our different realities based in this infinite abundant energy that we live in. That's a view. So in that view, the ultimate nature is bliss, but relatively we can have difficulties. But the lucky thing in relation to recognizing the nature of bliss is that the suffering that we undergo has to do with our inability to recognize the ultimate nature. So we can heal it, in other words. That's the positive thing. And actually, the human form in particular is particularly adept at doing that. And if we really do if we really find out that the purpose of human life is infinite education, you could say, we have the capability in this amazing supercomputer we carry around in our body, not only very much in our head, but also in all the body, up and down the spine and every nerve. We will discover that blissful reality they predict, And I think many, even others who didn't have that have that in the form of a full scientific theory, but they had it as a religious belief and went into what's called the mystical aspect of it. They also discovered that, because it's the reality. It isn't like there's a particular theory that does it. So that's why I would say it's a little bit complicated answer. I'm sorry, but in other words, you don't want to say, well, you don't want to blame people for not experiencing bliss. You just want to say it has to do with the failure to fully understand your experience, and that leaves open the door that they can come to understand their experience. Sometimes everyone has had an experience where they were so thrilled about something, like maybe they were in a roller coaster where they went through a fear thing, but then they got all excited because they felt transported, the kind of rapture of being like whooshed around in the thing, and then maybe they banged their elbow or something while they were rocking around in the chair, and then when they got there they had like a bump on the elbow and felt a little soreness, but they completely ignored the bump when they were all excited. Because you can have an overwhelming, joyful feeling and ignore something a little bit irritating during that time. So the idea is the more you learn to focus on that positive one, you can then ignore the negative one. My feeling about the COVID is, it is Mother Nature, whether it's in the form of some sort of bat molecule or something from a bat or whatever it is, but basically it's Mother Nature trying to call the attention of the elite of all the cultures in our society, not just American, Chinese, American, whatever, all the modern cultures, and the politicians and the scientists and people, that we are not living in a positive, healthy way in relation to our environment. And it's basically teaching us that all our vaunted technologies and our nuclear weapons and our and our industrial productions and our entertainments and all of them are too stressful to ourselves and the world, and the world that supports us, because we are our environment and our environment is us. So we're all interlocked in it with all the animals, and they're all part of us too. And we've been too harsh against them, the plants also. And this is warning us that it will be much, much worse if we continue in this vein. So I'm very sorry people have died. I'm sorry people have lost jobs. Talk about spa. So many spas have closed and gone bankrupt, and I don't know how many hundreds of, every yoga center is a kind of spa. And there's many of them have closed around the world. They can't make the rent, people can't assemble. So that's been very, very hard, and we've been put back onto a kind of retreat, all of us. But on the other hand, we have learned our vulnerability, and we have had to find silver linings in things, and we have managed to get now a new movement in the society, which has produced a new government, that is now putting its effort into making our lifestyle more livable and more sustainable. And there are obstructing forces, of course, but those were the same forces that were ruling us and carrying us in the absolutely wrong and destructive directions. So naturally they're resisting, they're being stubborn and resisting moving back in a positive direction. And we have to actually recognize that, and we have to adapt to that. And we have to help them out of their stupid posture, which we will. Because eventually, although they will feel they're being pushed at first, when they see things, when they feel better themselves, they will actually change their mind. We think we're coming out of it now, and we get ready to come out of it, but we adapt. And everyone should adapt. That's what we should do now. So those are all silver linings. A dear friend of mine, a former student, the wonderful director and a nominee, Academy Award, multi-Academy Award time, David Russell. He did a wonderful movie, but even just the title I love is called The Silver Linings Playbook. I don't take any credit for it, but except he himself is a positive person like that. And that's what we should have, is a silver linings playbook to deal with all these difficult things, And even when they're dying, people should be looking for the silver lining, and realize but they should read up on near-death experience literature, and realize that once people get past the body, they go through this tunnel of light, and they meet Jesus, or they meet Buddha, or they meet whoever they're expecting to meet, and reality sends them help, and they have a great time. Unless they're so paranoid that they automatically don't even recognize any friendly person, and then they meet what they fear, which is some sort of violent, nightmarish type of things. And that could happen too if they've lived badly that way. And they shouldn't, therefore they should start while they're alive to live more openly and happily. I think that the reason we have had these wars and horrible, nasty things, and we have them still, is that the most people are pretty kind and nice, actually. I was once asked, when I wrote my Inner Revolution book, one of my first trade book, like what you call non-academic book, for the general audience, as I book toured that, because you did that in those days, a mere 30 years ago, people said, well, because I had a theory there of what I call cool heroism, of heroes and sheroes, where people can be forceful without violence, and they can be forceful in a gentle way, but they can still stand up for what it is that they think should happen, but without any violence. And like martial arts, almost, let's say, of making the good emerge. And they said, well, where are all these cool heroes? And they were thinking of where's all the Gandhis and the Dalai Lamas and the Pope Francises and whoever it is. And I sort of went in that direction, where are the sort of outstanding persons, as opposed to the Genghis Khans and the Hitlers and the whatever. And so I was thinking that way, but then luckily I was saved, and I thought of my own family where I grew up, and I realized that the woman in the family is the cool hero, and the brothers are about to beat each other up, and son and father will fight, And the uncles and, the males will all get in brawls, and even, they'll drink even in a Christmas party or a New Year's party or a Passover party or a Thanksgiving dinner. And they'll end up in a big argument and quarrel and practically come to blows. And the people who go in the middle between them and say, no, you didn't mean that, Uncle Joe, don't say that to your nephew, and no, don't take it back, don't talk like that, you don't really mean it, you're going to be sorry later. And they sometimes get hit in the middle, in between, are the women. So then I had a perfect answer for that person. I said, the cool sheroes, but I didn't have the word shero at that time, heroin, which has the other unpleasant connotation of the addictive drug. So sheroes, I think it's a wonder we should get that in the dictionary. So the cool sheroes are the women, and that's half of humanity. And they are basically more gentle because they have the experience of another being in their own body, or if they don't physically have it in a particular life, they know about it anyway, biologically. And therefore they are less unrealistic about the separateness between people and beings, and therefore they're against war as a whole. There are so many works of literature. Why are you taking my son off to be killed in a war with the Germans or the French or the Italians, or whoever it is, Napoleon or whoever you are, There's, the women lamenting this nonsense, by the men bashing each other over the head. So I think humanity has been like that, but because they're more gentle and peaceful, then a small few nasty ones can manipulate them into huge mechanisms of destruction. And for example, the communist dictatorships, they took over the more gentle societies, I think, like the pre-Russian people. Of course, they had their czar and their silly things, but even Count Tolstoy wrote War and Peace, and in his old age he went around to be a saint, gave away all his things and became a vegetarian. And the Russians, they were really strong Christians, and they really trying to be Christ-like, in their Russian thing. So they fell for the Marxist thing that we should all share everything, and they didn't recognize the one stupid thing of the dictatorship of the proletariat. And then they put the KGB, small little clique of people who, of course, got to that position, the Bolsheviks, by being more violent than the other people. So they ended up being controlled by a very, very violent small clique into becoming all militarized as a culture. But they're really the more gentle people. We Americans are rougher, because of all the violent people left Europe, the Viking type of people, and they went over and genocided the native people and brought a bunch of blacks and enslaved them. So we were more rough, so we didn't fall for that. But we now and then we do fall for some stupid type of imperialist, dictatorish type of president. On and off we do. And we are slave owners, in the old days, and we never really escaped from all the slave owners. They've been a faction, a minority faction, but always a faction in our as we've been waking up to try to have a better society. I think of the wellness industry as helping humans in societies where it can flourish, where it's allowed to flourish, rediscover their own gentleness and their own blissfulness and their own happiness, and then be trying to develop a way of living outside of the wellness institutions in a way where they bring that to the larger society. So it's a very critical and crucial industry, it seems to me. It's part of the healing. On one side, it's part of the healing industry, and on the other side, it's part of the educational industry. And those industries are the two most important industries on the planet, healing and education. The greatness of it is that people are treated as a whole being, and their spiritual, mental, and ethical levels have to do with their health, and have to do with their life force. And if they are living unethically, and then they just go and get a massage, that's not going to undo the harm they're doing to themselves by living in a stressful way with the world. Because when you're unethical, you're harming other people, you have to fend them off and fight them down, and then you don't really have friends, because you're in a state of conflict with everybody. And so, therefore, you'll be unhealthy, inevitably. And you can have a little reprieve, and even that maybe will get through to you in your dense, conflict-oriented, competitive mode, that there is a better way of living, and the health industry is there to help you learn it. But there's something to be learned there as well as to be enjoyed, in other words. So when we think of it only as a spa of giving you physical pleasure, then that's not a complete spa. There's an educational level to the spa. That's why we are raising capital to build an educational kitchen where you can learn to eat better and cook better and understand the whole process of food, and living, which then you carry back out to living, And we want all the greatest cooks in the world to come and teach there, and one of the greatest is going to help us design that when we get the money. I refuse to put some dinky little thing and say we did it. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we do here, that we're doing in our educational teachings, is we are connecting the sort of meditative tradition of the sort of the Buddhist tradition being a grand, literate, urbanized society product with a huge literature and so on, and very, very literate, and with a cumulative literature of science as well as story and so on. But it has the way that it understands reality, the non-literate societies, the oral societies, it does very much connect to them. And in a way, the symbolic archetype of the Buddha's life, he was born, his mother was leaning against a tree when he was born by sort of miracle cesarean, without any incision, just melting through the skin like Filipino psychic surgery. And he was enlightened sitting under a tree, and he passed away sitting between two trees. And the shaman symbol is always connected to trees in cultures that are oral cultures, because the tree has its roots in the earth and its branches in the sky. And so it's a connection of heaven and earth, a tree. And the tree is also like the human nervous system, the central channel, the spine, the brain, and so forth, and the root life chakras, and so on. And then the interconnectedness of all life was what was Buddha's basic discovery in his teaching, and that interconnectedness revealed the goodness of life and the abundance of life and the livability of life, if you will, so the sustainability of life. Sustainability really means livability, in a way, really. Sustainability is maybe not the right word, but livability is the right word. And so therefore, naturally, the rediscovery of shamanic wisdom from the oral cultures, even though they were intermediate technology cultures, they were not, quote, high metallic technology cultures, because they were more respective of earth and ores and metals, and they didn't dredge them up and then create some huge artificial things as much. So shamanic journeying can be very valuable. For example, I believe people who do former life regression therapy, which is very important for people to then realize that in this life, what they do will have consequence in future lives, in order to really concretely feel that, so that they will restrain themselves in this life in order to not create bad effects in future life. Just because they think they can get away with it in this life, they won't do it because they won't in the future get away with it, in other words. A different level of internalizing an ethical way of relating to, and a gentle way of relating to reality. So is a journeying like by visualization and like shamanic journeying into thinking of themselves as being different, and then coming out of their imagination will be memories from previous lives often. And there's a common thing in the past life regression where you go and you walk down a path, and then you look down and see what sort of shoes you're wearing, and then you cross a bridge and what sort of place do you come to, and then people will start remembering, oh, now I'm in Sri Lanka or something, People have that experience, sort of a light hypnosis level where then deeper memories from the subtle mind can be retrieved. Let me give you an example. I'm going to take off my shoes, and I'm going to sit cross-legged in this chair, and put my hands like that, with the thumb tips touching, and the palms flat against them. And then straight, keep my back a bit, have my butt a little higher than my knees, so that I'm a little tipped forward. That's important. And then back is kind of straight. Chin is a little tucked, although talking, I'll forget about that. And eyes sort of looking not cross-eyed at the tip of the nose, but sort of at a point in front of it with them half lidded is ideal. But you could close them, or if you weren't sleepy, or you could, and there are some traditions where you just keep them wide open. But the half open is considered the best. And then just breathe. And you might try this just for a minute. I know I'm supposed to be giving a lecture, and I have been talking, but just try to only rejoice and enjoy breathing. And just inhale and exhale. And the one thing I love, especially in this climate-sensitive age, at which we should righteously be climate-sensitive, realize as you draw in the oxygen, you are receiving the generosity of the plant kingdom. Because a lot of our oxygen comes from the leaves and the trees and the grasses and the flowers and the plants. And then when you exhale, you realize your carbon is going to them, and it is producing the greenness in the leaf, and it is producing the root and stem of the bushes and trees. So your breathing is an act of interaction with nature, and especially with the plant kingdom. And so as you enjoy the breath, and if you think, well, I just breathe anyway, I don't enjoy it. Well, the point is you can. It's something you can immediately enjoy. You don't have to go down and buy something at a restaurant. You don't have to go and find a water fountain. You just breathe, and it's so accessible to you that you do it without even thinking about it or appreciating it. And you're not testing your concentration right away. You're simply enjoying that you're breathing. And when you turn your attention to do that, at first maybe you will take a little bit slower and deeper breaths. Although you can also do it trying not to intervene with your breathing and letting it just go as it normally does. But it's hard to, because when you focus on it, you automatically, you tend to draw deeper breaths. And as you enjoy, you think about how your chest expands, your two lungs, wonderful, kind, friendly lungs that you have. They are getting this charge of oxygen, and the special little alveoli cells are transmitting that oxygen through very fine membrane into the bloodstream and energizing your heart pump that circulates it around. And so you breathe more deeply when you focus on the breathing, because you're getting something from it, and you're getting the gift of the plant kingdom. And you're feeling grateful to the plants. And next time you walk outside, you might look a little bit differently at the bushes or at the tree leaves, as it's in springtime here in the Catskills, beautiful mountain valley we're in. And the grass is beginning to be a bit green. And if I've spent a few minutes enjoying breathing and feeling appreciative, grateful to the plant kingdom, I might look more attentively at the grass that is beginning to be green and feel grateful to it. If you're looking at a screen now listening to this, don't bother to do that. Just enjoy breathing and appreciate breathing. And appreciate your knowledge of your interwovenness with the plant kingdom and all of its gifts to you. And then as you feel that gratitude, you will feel like an inner smile. And then you will feel welling up from within yourself maybe from the heart center, from the, the abdomen where it seems it expands when you inhale deeply, as if you're sending the air even to other places beyond the lungs, which indirectly you are, although the bloodstream helps you with that. And the pump, wonderful heart pump, and the liver. There was a great healer called Anthony William, who I love a great deal, the medium, and who says that we must always thank our other organs, especially the liver, and be appreciative of them, because they all feel a little jealous because we fuss about our heart a lot. I really like that. They go, oh, I'm so grateful to your heart for beating, because of course we have to have a pulse, right? But the other organs do tremendously vital and useful and wonderful things to us. So we should make a point of thanking them and sending them our appreciativeness and our gratefulness. Thank you, liver. Liver does huge, and kidneys, what a detox work they have to do. And the kidneys connected to the adrenal glands that are dealing with all the stress that we unnecessarily impose upon ourselves. So here's our message to you from Menla Dewa Spa and Menla Spa Retreat and Resort, is you have your own body as a spa. You shouldn't stress out offering your spa offerings to clients to get them to unstress. If you're too stressed doing it, you won't do it well. You should be using your own body as your own unstressing machine. And the way of doing that is turn your mind to see the silver lining of your body. I have a pain in my knee. I have a little pain in my shoulder. I'm an elderly person. But I'm so happy I can breathe. And it feels so good to draw in that oxygen. The Japanese have a wonderful thing we also do here, although Tibet culture is our mainstream, but we love all the Asian cultures and Western mystical ones that teach the beauty of nature. And the Japanese, we adapt from the Japanese a wonderful thing called forest bathing. And there's a wonderful guy in Japan who was an academic total failure until he met a mentor teacher who told him, since he loved being in the woods, he should make a study out of it and get a PhD in the biochemistry of being in nature. And he started as a completely maverick thing, and he got that PhD in some sort of program in one of the Japanese universities. And then the Japanese government eventually made him a national treasure and gave him huge grants because he found out that, serotonin uptake and dopamine and all kinds of things neuroscientifically arise in you just from being in a forest, in a natural, or standing nearby a waterfall, or taking a short walk in the woods, or like up a mountain or something. Not just heavy exercise necessarily, but it's just being there or sitting there. And it affects our biology in a really positive way. So the message is just help people to find contentment in their breathing and the reality of why it is they do breathe and can breathe, and who gives them the oxygen. And then discover that they have a capacity in themselves when relaxing and looking and minding their own inner well of contentment in the simplest just being. Don't have to call it even fancy meditating, just bathing in air and breathing and feeling grateful about it and lowering stress, and replacing it with bliss. So just breathe. Some of you, when you do that, might make you feel sleepy. And that's good. Don't feel something wrong with you, because it means that as you relax away from stress and move toward bliss, and your inner bliss, you don't require any external thing for it, and you move in toward your inner bliss, a sort of deep tiredness from your constant exposure to stress in our very, very highly competitive society might be just telling on you, and it's telling you, you're finding your own body's request to you to sleep, to rest. Because sleeping is a wonderful thing where you temporarily give up your boundary. When you let go of your consciousness of your surroundings and yourself, and let yourself slide into unconsciousness, you're also giving up your defense perimeter, so to speak. I mean, you feel safe doing it because you have the door closed and you have the heater on and you have the windows closed or open depending on the season, and you have screens, etc. You know, you have a nice blanket and pillow and blah, blah, blah. So you create a defense perimeter, but within that you then release your defense perimeter. And then that's such tremendous relief, because we're overstressed and overscared and over-frightened by the way we're taught to perceive our environment and construct our experience of our environment. So sleep is a big, huge relief, and what it does is, when we become open like that, the positive energy in the universe just seeps into our cells and renews their energy, which is a kind of, from which we can infer the basic benevolence of reality, which is a really important thing to become aware of. So thank you, Organic Spa devotees, for inviting me to speak with you and meditate with you and give you a gift of some kind of meditating and enjoying your breathing. I hope you go out of this enjoying your breathing more, really, more than necessarily remembering any particular thing I say. Although I hope you also can remember to demand your right, birthright as a human being, to be happy. That's really key. And also the most important takeaway of all is to, which the breathing is just a doorway to, is to be trusting of reality, you know. The great Erik Erikson, who was a wonderful psychologist and psychiatrist in the past and a great writer, he wrote that one of the 7 things that make a mature adult in the stages of childhood, coming from the baby's relating to the mother's breast, actually, in a positive way, or some version of it, was to develop a sense of basic trust in life. And without that, it's very difficult to have a happy life. And that's a very, very key thing. So it's not even a religious thing or any big, huge discovery. Everybody knows that. So there has to be yes, you would be cautious still about being run over by a truck and eating a bad poisonous food, or some sort of doing something that's bad for you, or some addictive thing that will harm you. But to have a deep-seated sense of that, the deeper level you can trust reality itself is absolutely critical to it. De-stressing your life, and that is your business, is helping people de-stress. And I think it is the greatest business on the planet, actually. And so we're very happy to participate with you here at Menla, Tibet Houses, Menla, Dewa Spa, which is a little bit an offering and an invitation by the Dalai Lama, because this is the Dalai Lama's cultural institution, to beings to try to learn to enjoy themselves a bit more, be a bit happier and a bit more kind, and that's really what he hopes for humanity, and feels is possible for us, in fact.
The Bob Thurman podcast is brought to you in part through the generous support of the Tibet House US Menla membership community and listeners like you, and is distributed through a Creative Commons No Derivatives license. Please feel free to share, like, and post on your favorite social media platform. Tashi Delek, and thanks for tuning in.